Katie Lang, Rush, Heart, Daniel Lanois, Roy Orbison, Elton John, Feist. These are just a few of the artists he has worked with, including 9 Grammy nominations. Welcome to Sundown. My name is Jonathan Lindsay, and my guest tonight is Ben Mink. All right, Ben, thanks so much for coming out.
My pleasure, Jonathan.
This is cool. Every time I see you over the last number of years, you always, in the middle of conversation, have some great story from over the years that comes out. So I'm excited to get to talk to you and just sit down and go through some of the highlights. You've had such an amazing career that it's hard to choose little bits and things. But I want to start kind of in the beginning. So you grew up in Toronto.
Yeah.
And you started playing at a pretty young age and gigging at a pretty young age, right?
Yeah,
Playing
I
guitar?
did. I was playing guitar, like folk guitar. It was the folk scene at the time.
Yeah.
And Toronto had a wonderful burgeoning folk scene and some TV shows and stuff. And I grew up in an area where there was a lot of activity going on there, and my parents are very musical. My sister played the violin, and I saw it as a small guitar, so I used to strum it and could always get a sound out of it. But anyway, there were folk groups and there were TV shows. There was one called Sing Out and Hullabaloo, and these shows would feature local folk artists and some very established folk artists who, as a young kid, I didn't know how seminal and important they were, but there was a show called Sing Out with a guy hosting, Oscar Brand, and he would have people like Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee, Joni Mitchell. Wow. People would just get on that show. I think even Simon & Garfunkel even did it.
Was it a TV show or a radio show?
It was a TV show.
Okay.
And there was a whole lineup of artists, and one by one they would play the songs. So you'd watch it on TV, and then you find out when you're 11 or 12 years old that there's a street in Toronto called Yorkville, and all this stuff, these guys were actually playing on the street. So I'd look at the TV set and I go, that guy was great, I could go see him. And you would hitchhike down there, or you'd ask we were so young, I had my friend, his dad would drive us down at 7 o'clock or something and pick us up right at 9:30, and then we'd go back home and go to school the next day. But I remember seeing Junior Wells and Buddy Guy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we got down and dropped. It was a stage probably not much bigger than this at the Riverboat, and we went to see them, and there they are, electric guitar, harmonica, singing the blues, and we were like 12 years old. But that's the kind of thing that was going on there. Robbie Robertson and the band were playing, backing up Ronnie Hawkins down the street. Joni Mitchell was at the Mouse Hole. Rick James and Neil Young were playing, two doors down at the Mynah Bird. It was just insane.
I still can't get over this. This is like Rick James, like Super Freak Rick James, playing with Neil Young.
Yeah.
In my mind, I cannot picture that combination.
You'll see it. But it was an incredible scene because Canada had a very interesting perspective. It was hard to get out of Canada if you were a struggling artist looking for a record deal.
Okay.
And I think Canada had an overview that a lot of countries don't have. We were so close to the States, we could see what was happening down there. And we were related to Britain, so the whole, the British explosion, we had a chance to weigh the left and right of it. At the same time, we couldn't partake because there was no big industry. So you had to work really hard, and you had to tour across the country, go to Halifax and work your way all over to Vancouver. And I think through the difficulty of playing and working the geography, you got really good, and your perspective was different. So you'd have, Neil Young writing songs about there's a town in North Ontario, and folk music and roots-oriented music became a real voice of Canada. And later on, when you'd meet all the Canadians and they'd go, we had a real thing going, but you were just trying to get out.
Yeah.
You were trying to get a U.S. record deal. And and make a living.
I feel like a lot of people around the world probably know names of like places in Canada more from like music from like Neil Young and artists like
Yeah.
that than from like actual maps and geography.
Yeah, well, when I toured in the States and went to the South for the first time, I was really amazed at how little they knew about Canada. Like, we would have talks in restaurants or something with the waitresses and say, well, how big do you think Canada is? And they'd go, oh, I don't know. I go, do you think it's bigger than the United States or smaller? She goes, oh, it's pretty big, but not much, and
Not that big.
no, yeah, and, they knew very, very little about Canada.
Oh, that's amazing. Now you started performing pretty young too, right? You're saying about 12 years old or so?
Yeah, I started backing up local folk singers at the North Y when I was about 12 and a half on 12-string guitar primarily.
12 string. Oh,
Yeah.
geez. Did you learn on 12 string?
Yeah, I did because I went to buy a guitar with my dad there was a famous store downtown around Jarvis and Queen called Richmond's Trading Post.
Oh, yes. That's right. I've heard of
really
it.
have
I've
you?
heard of it, yes.
Yeah, and he had all the great guitars. And I walked down and I saw this 12-string guitar, and I figured, if I take 6 strings off, it can be a 6-string guitar. But if I put 6 more on, it can be a 12-string guitar. So it was 2 things in one.
Win-win.
And I had heard Lead Belly from
Of
that.
course,
There was a
yeah.
radio show in Toronto when I was about 12 that was on CFNY late at night. And they would play all the folk acts, and they would play Lead Belly. And he used to play 12-string guitar.
Yeah, he was mostly 12 string. I
Yeah,
think,
and there was
right?
also a big hit at the time called Walk Right In by the Rooftop Singers. So I learned that. That was the first song I learned on 12-string guitar.
Such a difficult guitar to learn on, though, compared to 6
Hard
strings.
to
Like
tune.
tuning and the playing
yeah,
of
it
it.
was, it was a Regent, and action was, of course, as every guitar was, insanely high.
Oh, man, that's brutal.
But you built chops, and you learned how to get the kitchen knife and cut it down,
When I was shopping for my first acoustic guitar in a pawn shop, I
Yeah.
found a Norman 12 string, and I was strumming it. I was amazed by the tone of it because it had this like, otherworldly sound that I'd never heard
Yeah.
of before with those extra strings. And I was so close to buying that for my first guitar, but thankfully somebody who knew more than I did said, no, you don't want a 12 string for your first guitar. Start
Well-
on a 6 string. It's much
well,
easier.
I traded the 12-string for an electric after that.
That's a wise decision. Probably built character though.
Yeah,
The 12 string.
and it's, well, it makes you think differently. I remember tuning the pairs in different tunings, so it wasn't always an octave, and it just
Oh, wow.
gives you a different perspective.
Yeah, that's cool. So once you're playing electric guitar, then you play more in like clubs with a bit more rock bands and
Yeah,
that type of thing?
the Beatles came out, and I really wasn't into them so much. It was the Stones for me.
Or? Okay. Everyone sort of picked a lane,
Yeah,
I think.
no,
right?
the Stones were bad boys, and I liked the blues a lot already from the folk stuff. And I knew the Beatles were good, but I liked the bad boy thing. And I had a guitar. I put a pickup on my 12-string. That was my first electric.
Okay.
A friend showed me how to plug into my tape recorder. I had a Pentron tape recorder with an input that said radio, and I never knew what it was. And my friend said, you just plug it in there, and it's an amplifier.
Yeah.
So I couldn't sleep for a week. I was so excited, and got a pickup and plugged it in. But then it fed back all the time. And then I borrowed a Roy Smeck from my friend.
Oh, like
Saw
a Harmony
what it,
Royce,
yeah,
Royce Mac?
saw what it
Cool.
was, and I said, okay, I'm in. And worked really hard, mowed lawns, and bought a Les Paul that a friend was selling for $400 that I still have.
Ooh.
A 58. And,
I'll give you 500 for it.
You can rent it for $500 for a week.
Ouch. I'll think about it.
Yeah, no, it's a great guitar. I've used it on
That's
a lot
cool.
of things. And then I started playing, local Y and dances, and you start to build a reputation. So, a couple of years go by, and I think you and I were talking about it, that there was a club in Toronto that had opened up called the Rock Pile.
The Rock Pile. Where in Toronto was that?
It was the Masonic Temple.
Okay.
It was at DuPont and Young, I think,
Okay.
or close to it. And It was a large temple, and every week they would have bands come there, great bands. So in one week you might have John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, Muddy Waters, and Chuck Berry.
Wow.
And we were the house band. So we would open for them. And sometimes they needed a backup band, like Chuck Berry needed a backup band.
Yeah, especially if he's coming up from the States.
So we'd
I
back
imagine.
them up, or I remember John Lee Hooker needed a backup band, and
Wow.
backed him up. And I remember he was tuned in between, he was sort of tuned at E minus a quarter. And our harmonica player couldn't really play along with it because
Ugh.
every note he had a bend. And I remember
Yeah.
halfway through he looked at me and he just walked off because it was too difficult to do. But what an opportunity, and we opened for Led Zeppelin at their debut. I think one of their first shows in North America debut.
Wow.
It was February 2nd, 1969, I think, or February
Yeah, that would
8th.
have been pretty early.
Because
for
I still have a
Zeppelin.
sticker, yeah. And I was really, really into the Yardbirds as a young guitarist. I'd learned,
Oh, sure.
all the Jeff Beck's things,
Yeah.
and Keith Richards, and those were the types of guitarists I was listening to on electric.
Mhm.
And we heard that the Led Zeppelin had an album out, and we were familiar with the record for a few months, and I listened to it under headphones all the time. And
It
then there
came
was
out
an opportunity.
69 was the
Yeah.
first record, I think. Yeah.
There was an opportunity or 68 maybe, opportunity for them to come to town. And we had heard about it, like we used to hang around in the office at the Rock Pile all the time, and me and another friend, a buddy, said, you got to bring them in, because I wanted to see them.
Oh, for
we
sure.
had just seen Jeff Beck play there with Rod
man.
Stewart and the whole band like a couple months before. And so, this was my dream come true.
Yeah.
Jimmy Page is coming,
Yeah.
they're all going to be there. But they weren't convinced that they should bring them in. So, I don't know, me and my friend were, saying, oh, you gotta. And they brought them in, and I think the contract was for 2 shows. They played later on in the summer as well. And it was all so casual. And, the album had edits in it, and songs were very organized.
Yeah.
But live, they were still just kind of jamming. And it was Led Zeppelin, and we hung around all day with them, and drum check, all of that. It was just all organic, and they were not really known then. Even the sticker said Led Zeppelin featuring Jimmy Page, because nobody knew them.
Oh, interesting.
So,
Wow. Give it another year or so, and
Yeah.
things were a little different.
but that club had more great bands. I mean, it's, a lot of people remember it. Great bands were playing it. MC5, we opened for.
Oh, no way. MC5. Wow, that's cool. Now, that Zeppelin show, that was a pretty pivotal moment for you and where you went sort of musically.
Yeah, it
with
really
musical
was.
instrument, because you were primarily guitar up to that point.
Yeah, I played violin, but not in any kind of serious context. I always kind of noodled around with it. And I was getting more interested in country music. We even did some country songs in the show, like as an opening set. We did mostly blues stuff, like
Yeah.
Paul Butterfield kind of things, and but we did some Buck Owens tunes as well. And because we had a guitarist in the band who was just a very talented guy, Mike Fenimore, who could sing and play guitar, and we learned a number of country tunes, and we did them with no regard to taste. We just played them. And anyway, I had listened to the Led Zeppelin record and noticed that there was a really unusual sound on Dazed and Confused.
Of course, yeah.
And then when they did the sound check, I saw Jimmy Page would take out the bow, and he was standing in the same position that, he had the same stage position I did. So he took the bow, and, they did the show, and then he just put it over to the side of the stage. And when they went for dinner or something, of course, I'm like a 17 or 18-year-old kid, and I go over there and take a look, and there's the
Yoink.
bow, and I take my guitar, and nobody's there. And I start going, I go, oh, I get it. You can only play one string at a time, the low one, but what if you had a violin and plugged it in? It would be loud, you could play all the strings. And it really affected me. Like, I started thinking, I can play the fiddle things, and I can amplify it for the rock things, and it'd be very cool. And it was a pivotal moment, it really was.
Yeah, because over the years from then, the violin kind of became more of your main instrument than the
Yeah,
guitar.
I made a real decision, like at the end, because I was getting so into violin. I kept having these fortunate things happen to me. Was walking downtown in Toronto at Varsity Arena, and I'd just seen Doug Kershaw on Johnny Carson a month before. I mean, on Johnny Cash show.
Oh, Johnny Cash. Okay.
Yeah, and he had a really important performance there. And I was blown away. And then I'm walking down the street, and he's opening for Roy Drusky, this country guy. And I go in the backstage, and the doors open, the exit, and I just walked in. And I saw his last few songs. And he went backstage afterwards, and we knocked on the door. I was with my friend, who I just saw for lunch today here.
Oh.
We were both together, and he said to me, strangely, would you, I told him I play a little bit, and he says, oh, would you mind getting my fiddle from the stage? Which was, it was an old, beautiful, ornamented fiddle, and I went up on stage and messed around with Louisiana Man, which he had just finished playing. And then I went backstage, and he showed me Diggy Diggy Low, and then he took off to Mariposa Folk Festival, which is where he was playing that evening. But he gave me his record. He had a record with his brother Rusty, and I still have it. And I went home and lived it for 4 or 5 months and learned everything on it. So yes, I got much, much more into fiddle, and then I started getting called for square dances and, basic sort of,
gigs to pay the bills and
hose-head
stuff.
sessions. And then it started morphing into recording sessions. And strange life. I don't know how that happened. I'm just a kid from the suburbs. And, you take an interest in something, and it just opened up, and it kept opening up. So I wasn't going to say no.
That, with that sort of instrument style, too, you went in a whole nother direction when you joined FM. In sort of late 70s there. I think that was, 77, was it?
Yeah.
Roughly?
Sounds pretty close, yeah. Well, they were, of course, enjoying a good deal of success, and rightfully so for Black Noise with Nash Slash. And then he left, and, he was also an electric violinist and mandolin player. And I think I was the only other one in town.
Yeah, there couldn't have been that many.
And they had a
and FM was Toronto based.
It was, but they were contracted to do a record, called Direct to Disc, and it was a live record where you would perform the entire side live. And they said, "Do you want to do the record with us?" But I wasn't in the band; I was just a hired guy who played mandolin and guitar. But it was really fun, and it went well. So they said, "Do you want to join the band?" And I had just finished playing for a few years with Murray McLaughlin, touring the folk thing, and they didn't know I had that rock background either. So I did not know much about progressive music.
Yeah, because FM was really more of a prog rock kind of
They were,
thing,
and I knew
right?
nothing about it. I was so steeped in folk at the time and touring with folk musicians that I missed Pink Floyd. I missed all of the prog stuff.
Wow.
And
Some of my personal favorite music is prog from the 70s.
later, FM opened for Rush on the Moving Pictures tour, and when I met Geddy, we were talking about prog rock, and he and I became fast friends, and he sat me down once, and I said, I've never really heard the stuff. And he sat me down for like hours, and he gave me a whole education on this is this, this is this, this is this. And I had a whole crash course evening with Armagnac and Scotch and prog rock. And I got caught up on it, because strangely enough, most of those prog rock guys were folkies to begin with anyway, like Pink Floyd.
I never thought of it that way.
Those are still folk songs.
Yeah,
they're
it's true.
kind of acid head folk songs, but they're still acoustic guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
lots of
if you
chords
didn't
and
have the
stuff.
great David Gilmour guitar solos, they'd still be great folk songs. But yes, I got much more into violin and doing a lot of session work. At a certain point, I started playing more guitar again, but with FM, it became the electric mandolin because it was in keeping with the sound. You had a high-pitched, essentially a guitar capoed at the octave,
Right.
tuned in fifths.
Wow.
And so it soared way above, but it gave Cameron Hawkins, who was just brilliant at the synthesis and sequencing, and in a seminal time for electronics, to have full reign over there. And then Martin Deller on drums would propel the whole thing, and it was an interesting ride, the whole thing.
Now, did you have to wear the Nash the Slash
No,
outfit
I
with
didn't.
the mummy wrap around the face?
No,
and was it top hat? I think it was.
Yeah,
or
top
something
hat.
like that?
Yeah, it was very theatrical and very 1940s movies, Phantom of the Opera kind of visuals. Though there was one very funny evening after I had left the band and Nash had rejoined. I went to see El Macombo, and we played a trick on the audience where they took me backstage, dressed me as Nash, because I could play all the songs.
There you go.
They put bandage on, they gave me a tux, the whole thing, and I went back on for the encore and played the song. And halfway through the song, Nash came on, and we both were there. Nobody knew who was who.
Did Nash know that you were coming out?
Yeah,
Oh,
it
he
was
did.
all
Okay,
planned.
there
He
you
did
go.
my
Planned.
makeup.
Oh,
So
that's hilarious. Now, one of the tracks from your FM days was sampled in the 2000s, I think, by Method Man.
yeah, we
That's
did a record.
wild.
We did a record. Didn't do very well, but it was fun. Called City of Fear, and there was a song called Nobody at All, and a slow song, a ballad. And I mean, this record, it was plagued with a lot of issues. The record company kind of went bankrupt, and
Ooh.
GRT, another acronym thing. Yeah. Anyway, there were a lot of problems with it, and it didn't do very well. And we stuck it out another year, and then I left the band. But about 15 or 20 years go by, and I get a call from a clearinghouse in the United States, and they're trying to find the authors of this song. And I go, well, what's it for? And I said, who are you? And they said, we're a clearinghouse. We're hired by a rapper. He's used part of the song in his for his next CD release, and we want to get that cleared. I said, okay, who is it? And she said, Method Man. I wasn't really into rappers too much, but apparently he was, a very important rapper at the time. But he took the
definitely.
song and he had sped it up.
Because it was
and
a ballad, so
yeah,
that would
and
make
used
sense.
it. But I don't know where in the world he would have heard it. It's not like it was popular once and then somebody brought it up. Probably just a used record bin, and it's just fluky. But so we share authorship with Method Man.
That's amazing. That's so cool. That's a neat period. I mean, that's what really kicked off your relationship with Geddy and Rush and all
Yeah.
that. I mean, I'm still thinking about like sitting there for an evening drinking scotch with Geddy Lee, going through all these prog rock records. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, they got you to perform or record on one of the tracks on their '82 record, I think it was.
Signals.
Right? Yeah, the
Yeah.
Losing It
Yeah.
track.
Yeah. We had toured together, and we were jamming a lot on stage as well, and having a lot of fun. And then the tour ended, and I just got a call from Geddy, and they thought they had a song that would suit the violin well because they knew what I sounded like. And they sent it to me, and I said, yeah, I'd love to give it a go. And then I listened to it a little more carefully, and it had insect meters on it, just like basically it was in 5/4 or 5/8 and in a swing, and then the solo section just breaks down into, I think, 16th, and then every second bar is missing a 16th. So it's like
They don't make it easy.
like 15. It's like 16, 16, 15, 16.
Oh, boy.
But you don't count. You just feel it, and it's a beautiful song, and especially in retrospect, you know, where we all get older, and Neil's not here anymore, and I remember, you know, thinking that when I was recording it, and I played. They were kind enough to ask me to play live on the R40 tour.
That was not too long ago, right?
No, it was, well, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And we had never played it live. And, you know, it was very emotional, really, because you have to, it's one thing to record it in the studio, it's another thing to pull it off live, to think about it, and to look in retrospect at, you know, here we are losing it, really. Everybody grows older.
Yeah.
And it was profound, really. I think the emotional side of it was, but you know, it's a beautiful song, and it really holds up, I think.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, that seems like it was a pretty busy time for you, because you also did a solo record in that kind of time period, a couple of years before.
Yeah, I did the solo record a couple of years
1980?
before. Yeah, it came out of a government grant. Like,
oh, nice.
I applied for a government grant at the urging of my friend Al Soberman, and I would never have done it anyway. I'm not the most proactive guy in the world, but he says, you can do this, and it was, I think the heading, the subject of the grant was to reinterpret Canadian fiddle styles in a contemporary context. That's what it was.
That's perfect, though. They love that, the Canadian angle.
Exactly. But that's what I loved. I mean, I was really into all that. So I submitted some demos, and I got the grant. And then we went to, appropriately enough, a studio in Hamilton called Grant Avenue
Studios. Yeah.
And
that was such a burgeoning scene right around
it
then.
really was a burgeoning scene. And we recorded it there whenever I had time off from FM. And the guys in FM played on it. And I had a couple guests, Mendelssohn Joe and some other friends. And we were signed to Passport Records. And they said, look, give it to us when you're done. If we like it, maybe we'll release it. But you're under contract. You have to release anything you've done with us. Okay. And that's what happened. I finished it. It was really just a exploratory government grant. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, we rocked it up a little bit and put it out. And it was well received. I did a couple shows, one at the El Macombo and one at a place on Eglinton Avenue in Toronto. And the opening act was Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey.
I've had a couple of that. You know, I played with a folk group called String Band, a seminal group too.
That's right.
We opened for Paul Butterfield Blues Band.
Yeah.
And there was a comedian who wanted to get known, so I heard that he had actually paid $100 to be on the bill, but he opened for us. So it was Steve Martin and String Band and Paul Butterfield Blues Band. And at the end, we all did Circle Beyond Broken. I mean, it's just insane.
That's so cool. Having like a comedian opening for bands is a bit of an odd thing, but sometimes it must work.
We were both on, I think it was Johnny Carson's show years later. We were doing it with Katie Lang. And he was right backstage, and I went over and talked to him. I said, I haven't seen you since Paul Butterfield Blues Band.
That's cool. All right. I think we'll take a quick little break here, and then we'll do a little more talking, and you got some instruments with you as well. So we'll dig into those as well.
Okay.
So that's great. This is a lot of fun, and we'll be right back.
We'd like to do something a little different right now. We'd like to play a song for you tonight that we've never played live. We probably mess it up, but we're going to try it anyway. We have a very, very special guest to play with us tonight. Our good friend and virtuoso violinist, Mr. Ben Mink, who played on this song originally on the Signals album. He's kindly agreed to humiliate himself tonight for all you guys. Oh yes, the song is called Losing It.
So I think everybody's most familiar with your longtime collaboration with Katie Lang. How did that all start?
After after FM broke up, we had toured for a while before we broke up with a French-Canadian group called Cano. And they had a fiddle player in the group, and he unfortunately passed away. And when FM broke up, I got a call from the French-Canadian group saying, we have a few shows, would you consider playing with us? And I started to play with them and did all these wonderful shows in Quebec. And they were a Franco-Ontarian band, like Northern Ontario from Sudbury.
Oh, yeah.
And, I'd sort of known the material just through listening through the side of the stage, but had a lot of fun. And one day I went to a Chinese restaurant and I had a fortune cookie, and I opened it up and it said, "You need a change of scenery, try Japan." Okay, I had about $40 in the bank at the time, and I figured Japan, that's a laugh, okay?
Yeah.
Next day I get a call from the guys in Kano, and they say, "We got a chance to go to Japan and play. There's no money, but it's the Expo.
What?
It's Canada Week at Expo. And do you want to go?" And I go, "I got a fortune cookie." It said
You
I
have
should
to go.
Yeah,
You have
so,
to. The fortune cookie
so,
says.
Yeah. So we went. And it was boiling hot in August. And
yeah,
there was
yeah.
and when we arrived there, it was sound check, and we were there for a full week. So we would play different venues and all that. And there was the Boss Brass and Lorena McKinnott
Okay.
was playing, and this new person on the scene from the prairies called Katie Lang. And I saw the sound check, and I said, "Okay, I get it. The voice of a century, and somewhere between Bette Midler and the best lounge singer in the world, whoever, Wayne Newton or something." And
Okay.
I said, "I get it. She's phenomenal." And we went backstage, and I was walking, and she was dressed in her cowboy shirt, which had little plastic cows sewn onto the shirt. And I looked at her and I said, "Hold on a second." And I went into my change room, and I came out with my fiddle, which I'll show you later. And I said, "Look at this." And it was a fiddle with a country theme with the same little plastic figurines in the fiddle. And we knew we were onto something. And she said,
It's
"You
too
wanna-"
uncanny.
Yeah. So that doesn't happen very often. And she said, "Well, do you want to come out on the last night and play a bit with us, do a couple songs?" And she did Johnny Get Angry, and I played that with her. And she asked me, "Do you have any songs?" And I said, "Yeah, I got one. I never finished it, but it'd probably be good for you, And she says, "Well, send it to me." But I never did that kind of stuff. I was sort of too shy. I go back to Toronto. My niece comes home one day. I'm visiting my parents, and she says, "I found your high school notes. Look, you're failing everything." And in with the notes was a song that I'd written when I was with a band called Icarus. Eddie Schwartz was in that band, who wrote "Hit Me With Your Best Shot." And,
Yes, of course.
And I go back many, many years with Eddie. It was just after the Rockpile time. It was
Gotcha.
the summer following that. And Eddie was very kind and said, "You should try writing songs for the band. We'd listen to it." And I started writing, but I was too shy to bring it to the band. So it ends up in my school notes. 20 years go by. My niece finds it, and I go, "That's so weird. It's a song I just was telling KD about." So I took it as a sign.
Yeah. It's like a fortune cookie.
I was broke, and I just finished it and sent it off to the road manager, who's Steve Macklin. He lives here, and he's Sam Feldman's partner.
Oh, okay. Of course.
And I didn't know him. I didn't know if it would even reach him, but sent it out like a message in a bottle. And I heard back 12 hours later, they love the song. Seymour Stein wants you guys to, get together and try to write. So they flew her to Toronto, and we started to write and hit it off right away, as the precursor of the plastic cows would prove that there was something there. And my life changed. 9 months later, that song that I barely finished ended up closing the Olympics. called Turn Me Round, and it turned my life around. Never in a million years would I have ever thought that. But shows what can happen.
Yeah,
in
it's
this world.
incredible.
It's really incredible, and I don't take it for granted for 1 second.
So it led to you're doing a few records with Katie, playing in the band and writing.
Yeah, we went to England shortly after that and did Angel with a Lariat with Dave Edmunds producing. And she had an opportunity to do Shadowland, which was a record she wanted to do.
Right.
So we waited a bit, and then we did Torch and Twang. We were writing for Torch and Twang all during that period.
Mm-hmm.
And it won a Grammy. We did a couple of songs first because the record company wasn't sure we would be able to handle the task.
Oh,
we did a
wow.
couple songs first here in Vancouver
Yeah.
with Greg Petty, who co-produced, and it really worked well. And so we finished the record and went out and toured it. And who would have ever believed, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
once, I guess, sort of the next set of records from Katie were more like solo records, as opposed to like her in the band.
No, because
still-
afterwards we did Ingenue.
Yeah, and that was a just landmark record.
Yeah, well,
That
dis-
changed so much.
Well, despite the success that Torch and Twang was as a country record, it became clear that that market was really not going to have an open door. So we just looked at each other and said, "What do you want to do?" We said, "Let's just do whatever we want to do." And there was no big plan about what the style of music was. We thought of instruments that would be it would go well together, like we always liked vibes, and steel guitar was a given, but in a different way. And I remember taking CDs, like, because I had a Fostex 8-track tape recorder, and I would record a CD of steel guitar just randomly, and then record some vibes, and just play with the faders and see what the sounded like together. We go, that really works, This doesn't. It works well if you don't have heavy drums. It's good. And we just started writing, and it was very organic. We would use different tunings for almost every song. We would tune. She would tune the guitar how she wanted. I would listen to what she was doing and tune the guitar, and they were always in these strange tunings to override muscle memory. To have it in a setting where you're always searching. You go, if I play a D chord, it ain't going to sound like a D chord. I don't know where I'm going. So you're searching in a strange land. And when there's two people searching in a strange land, you're going to come up with interesting warm cabins,
Yeah, it must really sort of get your creative juices going because you're in the...
It's very intuitive. And then later, once you've recorded it on a cassette, you can listen back and go, okay, I'll switch brains here. That is really cool there. That's how people write all the time now, but this is before digital, manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
That works really well. Let's do this. And then we recorded it. And a lot of it is the demo, really. Even the vocals. Wow. Save Me is the demo vocal.
Wow.
And we never bettered it.
Sometimes you just
people
get
talk
it right
about,
the first
what kind of preamp did you use for the voice? There was no preamp. What did you use for the mic? Whatever they had along McQuaid. It was a 414, AKG 414.
Sure.
And we used a TIAC tape recorder, rental. Everything rented from Long and McQuaid. And I bought the mic afterwards from the rentals. They applied it towards the purchase. But there was no preamp. There was just the world's greatest singer.
I guess that's all you need.
Yeah, and recognizing a good moment. That's what makes great music.
That's amazing. And the very last track on that album ended up being one of the hugest songs of all time.
Yeah, I'm so happy we finished it because it wasn't a definite that it was going to be on the record. It was in a key that wasn't comfortable for her to sing, and so we retracked it. I retracked it with the engineer late one night, the best night decision I've ever made, I would say. and we changed the key, and then it stayed in the running for a bit, and it was the last song to record the vocals on. The guitar solo was put on a couple days before because there were no lyrics for another verse. But I liked it. It had something, and so it made it to the record. It was the last mix. And put it on, and then it came out, I think, in Britain first, and nothing much happened. And somehow they put it out in the United States, and radio took to it, and I'm glad they did.
Oh yeah, I mean, Constant Craving is such a classic song, and it was all over the radio back then. I remember being I was a kid, teenager around that time, just hearing it like all the time. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it was a game changer, that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then of course years later, I mean, I know it's public knowledge. The Rolling Stones accidentally, or Mick accidentally, it was registered there, and they'd shot a video for the Bridges to Babylon record, for the Anybody Seen My Baby song, and they were kind enough to cut us in as an authorship because the song, Keith Richards' daughter noticed it sounded a lot like Constant Craving.
Very, very similar.
Yeah, and I know that Mick and Katie, I think they met on a plane and started laughing about it, so I'm glad they did. But, it's just an incredible moment.
Well, especially for, growing up being such a Rolling Stones fan, being your favorite band, your ultimate icons. Now here you are sharing a writing credit with the Rolling Stones.
It's just ludicrous.
That really must have been, if you could have gone back in time to your, teenage self and told them that, what do you think?
It's a SNL skit,
It is. It's almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
It is. Just as a short story, my first fiddle that I paid money for, I did a show, speaking of SNL and Lorne Michaels, he's from Toronto, and he did a show.
That's right.
Like there's an old folks home in Toronto called Baycrest, and we did a show there. It was like a short version of Hair or something, and I was playing the band, and I got $100 for the show, but we did it for Lorne Michaels, and my friend lent me the money so I could buy that fiddle before somebody else did at the Folklore Center there.
Gotcha.
But that's what Toronto was. There were all these characters hanging around, and an incredible scene of inventive, inspired people. But you couldn't really do it in Toronto. It was very difficult. They had to go to New York.
Yeah, to the bigger scenes.
Yeah, bigger scene and create the show. And Paul Schaefer, who was
another Toronto guy,
good friend, right? And we all were hanging around that scene. I did my first recording session. Paul and I were both on our record, the first record for Tony Kosenick, a song called All Things Come From God.
Oh, no way.
And we were both on that session, and we still have the credit for it, and it's a great story. But everybody ended up going to New York, 20 years or 25 years had passed, and I'm with KD, and we did David Letterman. And I walked down the hall, and there's Paul. Hey, buddy,
Long time no see.
Yeah, what have you been up to,
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we take a look at some of these instruments that you brought along?
Okay, I'll give you the story.
That'd be awesome.
Okay.
What's the story?
Okay, the story is way back, before the days when it was easy to find 5-string violins. I used to hear some records, I guess, in the late 60s, early 70s from Nashville. There were a couple guys playing an instrument called a 5-string. It's really just a combined violin and viola, where violin is... it adds a C string,
cool,
and it becomes a viola. And and the register is somewhere in between, so it's a hybrid. But when you're playing with a band, it gave you an opportunity to bridge with the bass or the guitar.
Yeah, the extended range.
And you weren't limited to just, the soprano kind of voice there. And it opened up, you could also tune this lower, opened up a lot of different possibilities. So I didn't know where you could get one, but I knew that it wasn't that difficult. I had a different set of pegs. They were more like guitar gears that you could order from Hofner in Germany at the time.
Hofner, oh wow.
Yeah, and so I just drilled a little bit of the peg head out and shoved another peg in there.
Just threw another string on it.
Yeah, and then just widened the bridge there and then just messed around with it.
Wow.
And then it became a 5-string. And I
Cool.
used it on many albums. I used this with Murray McLaughlin's recordings and toured with it.
This
and
exact instrument?
This instrument.
Cool.
And then when I joined FM and the direct-to-disc record and all that, that was this instrument. And did which record was it? Surveillance, I think I did with this instrument too. And then we toured, we got louder, and and it started feeding back, and so I changed it for the next instrument you'll see. But
we can get some sounds out of
yeah,
this
it
one.
basically sounds where
Cool.
you get the low string here, that thing there, and you've got and today, of course, you can have octave dividers. So if you want to bring it down an octave lower, you can.
Oh yeah. That's
you
a
get all
massive.
that. Yeah, it's massive sound, and and then you've still got the rest of the strings up at the top. And then if you want the pitch on that. And you've got all that.
awesome.
So you have the range. And then if you want to rock it out, you just put the echoes on it and change the settings.
Oh
or
man, so much fun.
or if you want to grunge it up even
Oh,
more,
yes,
put
my favorite.
Yeah, I love these string modules. See, that's what Jimmy Page gave me.
Yeah, there you go. That is nasty sounding with
Yeah,
the ring
but
mod on there.
when it was
but
that,
in a
when
great
it was
way.
that, when it was that, that dazed and confused
Yeah,
kind of.
straight up and down. Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Plug it into a Marshall stack and away you go.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
That's amazing.
so that was this instrument. But then in the FM days, it would feed back a lot.
True,
So
true.
I thought of electric guitars like 335s that have a post in the center, and they're essentially half acoustic, half electric. And somebody gave me this, just a really bad acoustic violin. So I went home one night and I said, okay, I'm going to mess around with it. It was free.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
is,
So,
this is so wild.
but you should know
There's so
that
many reasons.
This is a funny story. I first used it at a folk festival before I cut it out, and I put a transistor radio amplifier in it. Like I tapped into the transistor radio volume control.
Okay.
So that you can see the little grill marks there. Like I drilled holes so that's where the speaker was. Didn't work out too well, or like AM radio stations would come through. So
I'm not surprised.
I sealed it up and figured, okay, that was where I changed the batteries there. I would experiment, and I plugged it in to an amp the whole time and kept putting in posts in there until it sort of resonated pretty well. And then I took it to a show. I think we were playing with FM in Mississauga or something, and plugged it in next to that one. And it just really rocked, like it was really a solid, cut
Just
through
more
anything.
focused kind of tone.
Yeah, and the band really liked it, and I had put, I don't know if you can see the camera here, you can get a close-up on the cows.
We can get some B-roll after or something.
And then...
what's the story with the figurines and the cows and stuff in there? Like,
okay, well, here's the whole story. You see these little tiny screws here, like holding that in?
yeah.
I used to live across the street from a toy train store called George's Trains in Toronto.
Gotcha.
And they had these little screws, and I figured the little screws
The
are
rail
good too.
nails.
Yeah, they'll hold these posts in. But they had these figurines for the train sets.
Yeah, for the miniature
And I
trains,
figured,
sure.
hey, that's great too. There's like a telephone here, and beach scenes and
Yeah,
like
cows
beach. Yeah, it would
and
look
you got-
like an old Annette Funicello beach movie.
Little soldier with a
guys
gun.
playing, yeah. Soldier with a gun, like whatever they had. I just glued it in because it was already working as an instrument. I thought I'd just have fun with it.
Sure, why not?
And then it was a stage show, and we figured, okay, I'm going to get some lights on. And I put some lights on, put a thing in here, and so it sounds
away you go.
it sounds similar to the other one. Why is it not working? Oh, I put it on, turned it
Mute.
off. Okay. It sounds similar to the other one. It's just got just more of an intense kind of song. It's got like really. And
It cuts for
so
sure.
so I use this on Losing It. This is the actual.
This is the
instrument I
one?
use.
Oh,
Yeah, this
wow.
is the one.
That's
So,
cool.
It's got that whole. It's got that electric in there. I busted a hair
There
there
you go.
too, but it's got that. So it's got
That
all
is
the electric
awesome.
kind of sounds, right?
It is.
But it also has.
It's like Jeff Beck on the
but
violin
yeah,
there.
exactly, yeah. But it also sounds like a violin. So it's got that. So
Sure,
it's a violin
yeah.
too.
Wow.
And then when today with today's technology, you can
I feel
get
like
an
I'm hearing a
octave.
radio right now too.
Yeah, with today's technology, you can get a fifth as well as the thing. So you get an octave and a fifth. You can do it.
Oh, sure.
A million people are doing it now, but it just works really well. Like it has a really solid kind of sound.
That's cool. Power chord central
Yeah.
through
it
the
is.
HX
Yeah.
effects here. That's
And
great.
and the nice thing is, it's lasted all these years. This is now 46 years old,
Wow.
and which tells you I'm older than that.
Unfortunately.
And just there was a
This
nice
one's
story.
got,
So I used this with Katie Lang after the Rock Days too. This is the instrument I used. I used it on Constant Craving as well. I think for there was a part in the choruses that was sort of like. That I used in the choruses, but I wanted it to be on the song, because I believed in it.
Yeah.
Anyway, and the tour before with Katie, when I was doing it in the country stuff, I met Buck Owens, who was a big hero of mine. I learned my first real fiddle tune from one of his records, Kern County Breakdown.
Cool.
And we became friends a little bit during the couple weeks, and I had him sign the back of the fiddle.
Look at
He was
that,
the only
Buck
one.
Owens.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was so kind, gave me a lot of business advice at the time, and just a super talented guy.
Wow. That's neat.
Yeah. Okay, so that's
So
that.
this. What on earth is this?
All right, so this is, here, let me get the,
They just keep getting wilder. This is the electric mandolin of sorts.
yes, so this is an electric mandolin when
Gone wild.
when I joined. I don't have a pick here, but when I joined FM,
Do I have one?
I mean, I was playing
The jazz pick?
I was playing folk mandolin, of course, with Murray McLaughlin and all
Yeah,
that. But,
yeah.
And I'd always, knowing what I knew about rock and thing, I wanted to have. I didn't want the double strings that mandolins have
Gotcha.
at the time because you can't wail, right?
Yeah, you want that electric guitar,
Yeah,
like
you want
Les Paul
and-
plugged
yeah,
in,
And
bending the
originally,
strings.
this didn't have a tremolo bar. And
I'm not surprised.
And nobody made them. There were guys in Nashville, I guess, making them, but they didn't make rock instruments. And so this is really old now. This is like almost 50 years old now. But
Now, was this
we used to-
decorated like over a period of time, or has it been from
well,
like
it
kind
had
of the get-go? Did it look
had
like this?
it had the silver duct tape on it. It's been worn out quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I did that first. I did that first. It was a lot easier than painting it. I take the easy way out every time. And
Maybe Eddie Van Halen
people
saw
would
this
give me.
and,
Yeah,
took a
no,
cue from
I
that.
think it was around. It might have been around the same time. I don't know.
Yeah, you got the tape, you got the Floyd Rose.
But there were guys making metal guitars at the time. You know those.
Yeah.
I forgot what company. A guy in Britain, I think.
Yeah, there was like the Travis Bean guitars with the metal necks.
and there were a lot
stuff.
of the country musicians had a real. They were way ahead of. There wouldn't be there wouldn't be electric guitars if not for the country musicians. Really, with all those guys, there wouldn't be tremolo units. They were all being made for a lot of these country guys.
Yeah.
Who would say, "Hey, that's really good, Leo, but we need something with a tremolo bar so it sounds like a bit like a steel guitar."
Yeah,
And then things would evolve. So.
thank God for that.
Yeah, and they had really cool, they were really into flashy, fancy kind of guitars, and so
yeah.
some of them would have interesting patterns. So I just modeled off of that, and then people would give me things when we were in Nashville. That's like, a little square dance couple there. I won this at the Nashville, it was like an amusement park thing. And anyway, you just throw it, whatever it is. But it's...
Yeah, let's hear this.
Let's see. So it's basically
Ooh,
it's
it's
a
a lot
small
louder.
it's a small electric guitar, but it's tuned in fifths
Yeah, that's great.
when it's in tune, and so I'll turn it down a bit. And it's just like
Sure.
so it's that kind of
The
thing.
Floyd
but,
Rose just cracks
yeah.
me up on there.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
but it it worked great. It used to do a lot of big.
There we go.
Yeah. It's going to be really out of tune now. Floyd Rose
I
or
bet.
not.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, nasty.
Now you can do jazz with it. Anyway,
Wow.
so they're the
Wild
instruments,
stuff.
and I'm thankful for them. They served me well.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Wild and wacky stuff.
And I still use this all the time.
Really?
Yep. Yep. I used this on Geddy Lee we found a couple old demos that were.
Well, you did a solo record with him, right? Around
Yeah, I did
2000
his solo record. Yeah, around 2000, and then we had a couple tracks that we forgot about them. They were lost. I came across them at the cottage, and he released them in conjunction with his book, wonderful book.
That's right. He did a book tour on that.
Yes, he
not too
did.
long ago.
But we added a couple instruments. I added some electric violin, which was this instrument here. So it still holds up, and still rocks.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. There's a lot of other cool stuff you've been doing in the 2000s, I guess, too. Like after the Geddy record there, you did some work with the Wilson sisters and Hart.
Yeah, forgot about that. Yeah, I did 3 records with them.
Was it 3? Wow,
Yeah, I
that's
did
cool.
Ann Wilson's solo record, Hope
Right.
and Glory. And then a couple years later, we did Red Velvet Car, and then Fanatic after that.
Was Red Velvet Car, was that the one that you had James Hetfield do a cameo on?
No,
Or
it wasn't even any of those. It was a record. The song that James Hetfield called "Beautiful Broken." We wrote it for Fanatic, and it didn't make it to the record. So it was an outtake.
Oh, interesting.
And Hart did another record afterwards, and they really liked that song. So they reworked it a little bit, having James come in and write some lyrics for it, and re-recorded it. That was their next record, called Beautifully Broken. So we all share authorship on it, though I wasn't there when he did his additional contribution. So
An odd pairing, but hey, why not?
well, Method Man too, and
Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
it's fun.
You ended up working with Feist
Yeah.
at some point
Down
too,
the street,
on
right down the street.
the 1, 2, 3, 4 song.
Yeah.
That thing went just gangbusters.
Yeah, well, she was a big fan of KD, and KD got a Governor General's Award, and they asked her to sing a song. So she sang one of our ingenue songs at the award show, unaccompanied, brilliant like she is. And I met her there, and then a while later, I got a call from her saying, I'm working on a new album, and there's a song that we're not sure, it's just not really working. I really like it. Can I send it to you? Give me your thoughts. And so she sent it to me, and I gave her my thoughts. And she said, do you want to work on it and see what we can do with it? And she says, I'm heading to LA. I can stop in Vancouver. So she did. I used to live just down the street here. So she came by, and she had dinner with us and played with the kids. And we spent a couple days redoing some vocals, and I added acoustics and electrics and strings to the song. But I remember talking to her when it was going down and saying, hey, you never know. You do your best. You never know what can happen with this song. Who the hell knows?
Maybe it'll go somewhere.
Yeah, maybe it goes somewhere. And who would have ever thought? Now I was one of the contributors. So I sent the parts back to the mixers in Paris, and we all contributed as producers, and it was a co-production credit. But I was just amazed. Another eyebrow raiser.
Well, I think
so happy for her.
Once Apple picked that up for that iPod campaign at the time, it just went completely global.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
and Feist called me one day, and she says, what are you doing? You're going to the Grammys. It was just like, just a lovely person.
Oh, wow. One of my favorite K.D. Lang records, too, is that Hymns for the 49th Parallel, which was in the time period, too. That's a fantastic record.
Yeah, we did that. I'm very fond of that record. It's a beautiful, beautiful
It's
record.
just so beautiful. The renditions of all those classic Canadian tunes is
I remember
great.
sitting with Katie trying to determine what song should be on, because it was
that must have been a hard choice.
It was a hard choice, but we tried a lot of them. I mean, we had set parameters for making that record. The one Katie wisely chose was she didn't really want drums on it. And at first I thought,
oh, this might be my favorite track on the record. Continue.
Yeah, and there were drums on one track. I don't even remember which one it was. But we recorded it all pretty much live in a very...
Really?
Yeah, pretty much entirely live. She sang for the most part live. We all just went through the arrangements there, sometimes just minutes before. I remember when we did Hallelujah, we were just sitting there, around the piano, and Katie's holding the microphone, and I got the chords and the sheet music up, and my foot's on the drum stool or on the piano bench, and it's just like an informal rehearsal, and that's how we recorded it.
Wow.
And then we took it home. I did some edits on it at home, and added electric guitar here down the street. And, you know, afterwards, of course, she sang it at the Olympics. And,
I remember that. That
you
was
know, the performance of a lifetime.
gorgeous. Just is stunning.
Yeah, but it was, I think it's a beautiful record.
Oh,
Really,
it's got so
I'm
much
very-
space and
Yeah, and
the pacing.
and there's not much on it. You know, the strings were done afterwards with Diodato, was arranging a lot of it. But we sat there all and discussed, you know, KD and myself, and he sat there with a piano and would hum parts back and forth. Because often I did the strings on it, but it was too extensive, and
Right.
we ended up using a cello quartet for a lot of it.
Oh, cool.
So it's not what it even appears to be, you know. But I'm glad you like it. I think it's a beautiful record.
It's absolutely beautiful. I really enjoy. Probably my favorite is "Bird on a Wire." I love that.
Yeah.
That rendition of it with the upright bass is just.
Yeah.
Every time I hear it, it blows my mind. It's great.
Yeah, well, David Pilch is just one of the finest musicians you'll ever meet, and I've known him from a long. He's from my neighborhood.
Oh.
And I used to do sessions with his dad, who was a professional jazz musician, Bernie Pilch. And he has a brother who's a jazz musician as well. But David, you know, he used to play with Blood, Sweat, and Tears when he was,
Oh, no way.
I think he was just out of his teens.
Huh.
And we used to do
amazing.
bar mitzvahs and stuff together, you know, and such a wonderfully warm musician and so cool. And so, yeah, he would tap on the bass as well.
Yeah, there's a bit of
while
a
he's playing it.
percussion to
Yeah,
it, yeah.
like somebody, the rule of the record really was that somebody had to be playing percussion at one time. So sometimes you'd have like, you know, Teddy Borowicki on piano on that tune. He'd just go don, 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 don. That's the time, you know, that's the kick drum.
It's that slow pulse.
And you would rearrange the pulses for the, you know, you'd reassign the drum parts to instruments. But it left so much room for the vocals and everything, and it, yeah, some beautiful stuff on there.
That's cool. So these days, are you playing instruments much? Are you playing much music?
Yeah, I
or-
play every
and
day. I
that's,
do.
That's awesome.
You know, I'm not going to be as prone to touring these days.
course.
But once in a while, a good show come up. I recently did something that was a tremendous amount of fun for the Canadian Country Music Awards, where K.D. Lang was given, you know, she was honored with the award there, and I think for lifetime achievement and she called me out of the blue and said, "What would you think about getting back the old reclines?"
Getting the band back together.
after 35 years
Yeah.
or something, and doing a tune. And I said, I think it'd be a blast. It'd be so much fun.
Oh, for sure.
So we did, and it was a blast. It was just so fun. You know, and it was, for me, it was really, really a lovely thing, because my daughter had never seen me play with KD, and she had a chance to do that.
Nice.
And you saw how quickly the years fall away when you're back in the room with the people that you loved, and in an instant it changed. You know, okay, grayer, older, but everybody played great, really, and it was one of the high points of the year for me. It really was. The one day in Toronto we went in, and we wanted to do it live. I think the TV show had a little problem with it, but we did it half live.
Half live.
Well,
Okay.
Katie sang live, background singer sang live, and I played live fiddle. But the other, you know, the bass and the drums were pre-recorded. I think they didn't want to have any kind of hassle, because it was entirely live at Rogers Arena in Edmonton. They didn't want any big problems there.
True. Yeah.
But it was just wonderful to see everybody, you know, after the show, just to sit in the bar and look at the people you love, and that you have so many wonderful years of making music, and in retrospect especially, see the influence you've had. It's so gratifying, you know, just beautiful week.
Yeah. Well, you've done so much music over the years in different genres and different types, and so where do you take it from here?
It's a good question, because, you know, not unlike a lot of my friends too, you know, you reach an age where you lose friends, and you're very aware the timeline gets shorter. So you have to be careful balancing what is important to you as a human and as an artist, and what is important to your family as a father and as a husband. You have to budget your time very carefully, and it's a strange world we're living in now. So I still try every day to view it with the same sort of wonderment I did as a young lad. Where anything can happen any day, to which I will testify. Because honestly, when I started, you talk about having nothing but a dream. That's all I had. I had $20 in a fiddle case, put my thumb out, and hitchhiked. And it led me to places I would never ever have dreamed. And not that you don't have help and you don't have luck. It's a lot of it, but
And fortune cookies.
And fortune cookies, and that what's that Jim Carrey film where he says yes to everything?
Oh, I know what you mean. Yes, right.
It's kind of like that. It's not that you have to say yes. You have to say also, yes, I absolutely will not do that. No, but it's an amazing planet. It's really anything can happen.
That's
for
awesome.
better or worse. So we've got to embrace it, even in these weird times.
Absolutely.
But I'm going through my memoirs and archiving. I don't know if I'm going to write a book or something, but I'm definitely going to put together some things for my family, at least. If it expands beyond there, great. And I'm getting rid of a lot of instruments, if you want to buy some.
There we go.
Not
we got
these.
a few here.
These are family heirlooms. I'm going to keep these. And just kind of trimming down what I don't need anymore, like downsizing musically as well. And I'm always meeting new people, and wonderful to see other people still around. I just talked to, do you know Colin Linden?
Yeah.
Okay, well, he just got nominated for his work on the T-Bone Burnett album for a Grammy.
Oh, cool.
And I sent him a quick note saying, I'm so proud of you, congratulations, I hope it works I hope you get the award. But I met him when he was 9 years old and I was 18. Right around I was working in a record store. He lived down the block, and he'd come into an area like this, not as equipped, but with guitars, and he'd sit there as a little kid playing guitar, and we would talk, and that's how long I've known him. So, and it wasn't an easy path for a guy like that either, but it shows you what can happen when you dream, when you try it. It's an astounding planet. It really is.
Absolutely.
So live your dreams. Go for it.
There we go. Words to live by. Well, that's great. Well, I look forward to any musical things coming in your future. I look forward to I hope you come up with some more unusual instruments in the future.
I'm always doing that.
I can't wait to see them. And I really appreciate you coming out tonight and chatting.
Oh, it's my pleasure,
with me. It's
really.
been a lot of fun.
No, it was my pleasure. You've been very kind to me and informative over the years. I've really, really enjoyed your expertise.
Oh, thank you.
And your band. And thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for coming out tonight. It's been a blast.
My pleasure. Yeah, it's been great.
And the stories just keep on going. Thanks for everybody for watching.
Let's jam sometime.
We'll see you next time. The jam is definitely on.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Take care.